Hit your start broadcast.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only
Good afternoon and welcome to another session of Detailing in Revit, Part 1. You're joined by your host, Brian Juge, and with me is Brian Mackey, your MC. He's going to be, MC, Mackey Consulting. There we go. Taking us through the land of detailing in Revit, just covering some of the basics. So now we'll fire up and we'll go to our next slide for those of you that are kind of new and hope looks like we have a lot of carryover from earlier today. But if you're not, you can see that we have the icons there to minimize the console, so it blocks a lot less of your screen. The raise your hand option for when you want to, do the what we call it. VBS, if you need to put that out there, and then if you need to ask questions, you're more than welcome to ask questions. In fact, we highly encourage it, and we'll continue on. Now getting on with the show, I'm actually getting into detailing in Revit, and for this one, this first part we'll be covering using detail components. Within that, we'll also do tagging. Obviously, you can see on the screen families instead of lines, so a big portion of, we're no longer in AutoCAD, we're no longer drawing lines that are useless. We're getting into some more intelligent things, and then also using families instead of filled regions, or for you still in AutoCAD land, hatch patterns. So we're getting into more intelligent modeling, and so here I'm joined with Brian Mackey, and he's going to take us through the land of detailing in Revit.
So a couple of survey polls before we get going, just so we can understand who we have in our audience. Are you guys currently detailing in Revit? I know a lot of people who are actually using Revit still like to go back to maybe AutoCAD architecture. I actually still have some clients who do their detailing with a pencil and paper, and then they scan it and bring the PDF, the TIFF image into Revit. So just out of curiosity, are you guys actually detailing in Revit, or is it even possibly a mixture of Revit and AutoCAD? So just trying to figure out, what we have in the audience, how much of this is going to be new.
So detailing in Revit, you would mean I draw it on AutoCAD and then import it into Revit?
No, that's still detailing in AutoCAD and importing in Revit. So are you truly using Revit? It doesn't have to be Revit components. It can be Revit with lines, arcs, circles, and filled regions / hatch patterns. You can go ahead and just close that one out and let everybody know. So it looks pretty good. We've been running these sessions for like the last 2 years, and it started off about 2475 in the opposite way. And it's good to see that we've got about 3/4 of the people actually starting to use details in Revit.
That's good to see.
So the next question that I always like to come in is, how are you annotating your details? So are you going in and using tags? Are you tagging all the detail components? Are you going in and just typing in text, or maybe a mixture of both? Because I always have one philosophy, and I've been teaching this for about 5 or 6 years, that if you're in Revit and you're using a line or you're using a piece of text, more than likely you're doing it wrong, at least wrong in my eyes. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing it that way, but just in my opinion, there's much more efficient and intelligent ways to do that. Because after all, we are in a program where we're talking about information modeling, so we can even extract information from those 2D components. And by tags, I guess I should clarify, that could be either keynote tags or just element tags, so either or on that one. So it looks like most of you guys have voted, so we'll go ahead and share that one as well. So looks like we've got about 50% of people using text and 50% of the people using both text and tags.
And a hybrid.
Rare 6% of the people who are using tags only. And I pretty much can probably guess who most of the people on here are who are doing that. I've preached and preached and preached to those firms that that's how it should be done.
Wow, you've had some conversions. You've had some sways your way.
So the next question I always like to figure out is, are you actually importing AutoCAD details? And I know a lot of people still do that, because first person jumped all over that and said no, thank you for whoever that person is. A lot of people go in and start importing AutoCAD details, partially because a lot of times you can get details from manufacturers. And I wish manufacturers would give us more and more Revit content as opposed to AutoCAD content, because that's truly what I need inside of there, going through and seeing what's going on in there. So, just like to go see how many people are doing that. And usually it ends up being quite a few people, and I'm actually impressed to see that the tides are turning. Again, probably about 3 years ago, maybe even just 2 years ago, these numbers were reversed. So yes, about 26% of you are importing CAD details, and about 74% like, no, you're doing it all natively in Revit. Or possibly going all the way out to AutoCAD, I guess, would be an option.
Yeah, you could interpret it that way.
So this one, I hate to do this, but I've got to, I got to see how many of you guys are going to make me cringe on this one. But are you guys, of those imported AutoCAD files and not linked CAD, are you exploding them?
Ooh.
Because the one thing that you'll hear, pretty much anybody, Autodesk actually came out a couple years ago, and I think they retracted the statement or hid the white paper.
Yeah, it's buried now.
That came out, but are you exploding those? Because for those of us who have been using Revit over many years have come to find out that if you actually explode, and this is really the reason this is on here for me to explain it to those people who have voted yes in this scenario, AutoCAD exploded files inside of Revit really starts to harm Revit. It doesn't have to be AutoCAD, I guess I should say CAD, so it could be DXFs, it could be MicroStation, or as well AutoCAD files. So one of those things that, yeah, really try to avoid exploding those. And I get really frustrated because I know still in some of the training books, like bring this AutoCAD file in, explode it, now we can have it as a Revit detail and do what we want with it. One of the worst possible things you can actually do inside of Revit. So I always like to ask that question and see what people are starting to do with all of that.
Yeah, definitely one of the easiest ways to corrupt all that hard work you've put together.
And of course, somebody did leave a comment up. I forgot to leave neither in a couple of those as a choice. I'm not doing any of the above, so probably have to change that. First comment I've had on that using those polls in a couple of years.
So you're not detailing at all, John? Maybe that's the case.
Yeah, maybe he's got such a good contractor he doesn't need
to detail.
So I really wanted to start getting into, and part one is just going to get into explaining my rule of if you're using a line or you're using text, odds are you're doing it wrong. I just want to kind of explain what that is, and that's really what this session is going to be about, is how can we go in and start creating details where those details are going to be set up to truly do what we need them to do. So still be intelligent if somebody changes or misspells it. It's consistent across the board. So the detailing that I'm going to do is going to strictly be done in drafting views. So I'm going to show a couple that I already have done. You can see that these are in my drafting views. These happen to be some that I have in my template that are already door details when we get inside of here. Now, the reason I always start to talk about this, and when you start looking at this, looks like I lost my arrowhead during the upgrade process.
And, well, that's easy to fix. We can show them how to do that.
So the thing I'd start talking about inside of here, and most of this, the studs, the walls, all of this stuff, a lot of this was done with out-of-the-box detail components. The door component itself, I did have to create, and in part 3 or part 2, I forget, I think it's part 3, we'll really start getting into how to create some of these detail components. I think part 2 is the basic detail components, and then part 3 is more advanced to the detail components. I guess I'm going to have to go refer to the PowerPoint slide. Yeah, so the first one is creating simple detail components and tags for those detail components, and then part 3 is going to get into nesting detail components and creating detail assemblies. So that's what we'll be getting into with those. So getting back to Revit, I am all about this, and what you'll start to see inside of here, and what I love about doing this is not text. These are tags. Now, in this case, my tags happen to be tagging type mark. I have a lot of clients who tag things with keynote, so depending on what you do. Excuse me one second.
Come on, let it out. He's got to see. There it is.
Excuse me. So the reason I start using detail components for everything, and as it starts coming through, and I start to embed it into a lot of my components, is the fact that as I come through here, and if I want to change this from a 3 5/8 inch metal runner, I can go in here and change it to be, ooh, this one has been imported and not updated. Oh, I've got to go open up a different file. I guess I am fired. So give me 1 second. I need to go open up a different file. BDM families, details. I think it's in here. Dang it, now this is where it's an awkward silence because I forgot to actually put in where it is going to be. There it is.
There we are.
Oh, that's right, I even have more inside here. So we'll come back in here to our doors and tiers. If I want to come down here and grab this object, and I want to go change it from that 3 5/8 inch channel runner to maybe we're going to 6 inch in this wall, you'll notice that as I updated that and changed it, all of my details started to update with it. So this is where we can start taking this and go into this in the future. And you'll see a lot of that in part 2 and part 3. We can have this information set up. And what's really great about that is as I updated that file, notice how the text automatically updated for me. And that's really where we start to talk about, hey, we do this to get intelligence out of it. We change the element goes through, it updates the information inside of there. You'll also see that when we get to part 3, creating nested detail components, so I can come in here and say, oh, well, this doesn't have a wood door. This basically just has a slab door, and just in the detail component itself of my door assembly, I have nested details inside of there to come through and get this where we need it to be.
This is if we had a live audience, you'd be hearing all the ooh, ah.
So the other thing on that, and this is not strictly just architectural based, I do like to show some things in there for structural as well. It kind of ends up being the same thing. That I've got this typical detail inside of here. Again, not a single filled region, not a single piece of text, not a single line inside of here. What we have going on is the fact that I've got all detail components. Now, this file, not a single thing is an out-of-the-box detail component. These are all custom ones I've made. What's great about these detail components is even though this is just a simple detail component, I can come in here and say, oh, I didn't want 1 foot rebar spacing. Maybe I wanted 9-inch rebar spacing. And watch what's going to happen. It's going to change from number 6 at 1 foot to number 6 at 9 inches. So it allows me to come through here and start updating and seeing what's going on inside of there. Even this component here has, oh, they're number 6 at 6 inches on center. What was I thinking? Those should have been 18 inches apart. And as I change that, again, it's going to update it. Now in this family, it didn't necessarily change anything in the detail, but it's allowing that value to be extracted out to a tag for this to happen. So we're going to go through and start talking about how doing this, but you'll see everything that I do when I create a standard detail is basically going to be 100% detail components.
And John comments, nice. Well, he had put some other expletives in front of that. So yes, it is nice to see some of these.
He's giving us the oohs and the
oohs and the ahs.
So in order to get started on this, and I guess I'll just plug away and work. Now we'll go back to the other file. We'll just start plugging and creating a new drafting view. So I'm going to go to the View tab, and I'm going to create a drafting view. Now, all of the methods I'm going to show you will be able to be used over the live model. So the question will usually come up, well, what happens if I'm detailing over the live model? If you have the live model as a background, great. You can still use these same examples. The thing that I'm getting into it when we start coming in and setting this up is the fact that I want to create standard details. These are going to be the details that I use as a starting point for all of the things coming up. As a structural engineer, I'm always going to have this structural foundation scenario or something similar to it. I'm going to, as an architect, always have this door head, this door jamb detail, or something similar to it. So when I start coming through here and get these set up, I'm allowing this to just be my typical views, but again, you could do the same thing over a hybrid view where you've got the 3D model and you're detailing over the top of it. So we're just going to call this typical. I haven't decided what I'm going to detail yet. So this is my typical whatever. Going to create a new drafting view. So once this new drafting view is created, there's a couple things that I like to do. And we're going to go ahead and just start browsing to some of my families so we can grab the families for Windows Explorer to load them. I find it a little bit easier that way. So I'm going to go browse to where I have my detail components stored. And one of the things that I always like to start with is a reference on how big is this detail going to be on a sheet. So a lot of firms have this, a lot of firms don't. I've got this thing called a guide grid, and I drug it from Windows Explorer to the view. I actually have this on my blog post if you guys want to understand something. So notice when I drag it from Windows Explorer to the view, I'm going to undo that and go back and do it again real quick. So if I take this guide grid and drag it into my view, it's going to allow me just to start placing that component that's inside of there. It's kind of frustrating that the Windows Explorer view doesn't go away, but I can just click on the header, and you'll see that now I've got this nice little guide grid that allows me to know how big this is going to be when I place it in a view. I have options for, am I doing 4 columns high, 4 columns rows, 4 columns in the detail sheet when it goes through there. So I've got a lot of this stuff set up, and I'm just going to start with a 4x4. This is usually a standard detail size when we get inside of here. So I have this set up, and the reason I use this is the fact that it allows me to now know, oh, here's my drafting area, here's my text area, here's my view title area, etc., depending on what's going on inside of there. This is a generic annotative component, and just to show you guys what I mean by that, I'm just going to go draw a couple reference planes on here. So you can see that right now this object is this big. But if I were to change the scale of this, and we decided it's a 3-inch scale, that is going to scale accordingly, so I understand that, hey, this will always be the right scale depending when I drop it on a sheet. So it's a standard, nice little generic annotative component that I like to use and go through and set it up.
And I got a couple questions. Well, David asked, the blog address again, so we had to your BD Mackey Consulting.
So my blog is, you can just Google Revit Geek if you want. It'll come up if you Google the Revit Geek, but it's my company's name, bdmackeyconsulting.com. And then there is my Revit Geek blog. You can get to it either on the tabs or the big button on home. So a lot of stuff inside of there. Another question came up is, where can I get that little grid? Actually, the one I loaded was one of my clients, but I have another version as well. Most firms will set this up. Maybe I'll do a blog post and I'll put it on my website for people to download.
There you go. Then the reason to go visit the blog and check it out.
So this is my starting point when I go. Not everybody has this. Not everybody will deal with it. But this is how I like to start, and going through and setting this information all up. So now when I go to start detail, I'm pretty much going to be spending my entire time on the annotate bar. So I'm going to be using the majority of these things are going to be detail components. So what am I going to do with this detail component? What am I going to be used for repeating details, etc.? I'm going to be using pretty much detail components and detail components only. I almost never use detail line, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But I'll use components, and then I'll be doing a lot of tagging, either by keynoting or by going through and setting it up. So I don't know, I'm going to start with something that's going to use metal stud. So I'm going to go find my metal stud, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in my metal stud for my section. I've got metal studs on the face. And you can also see that as I'm grabbing these, I am getting a nice little preview down in my Windows Explorer button. So, and we'll go grab some metal runners, if I can find those. Metal runner section. I don't have those in a face view. So what's great about this is you can drag all three of those into the screen, and what that just did was actually load all three of those components. So if you're dragging more than one object into the drawing screen, before I drag a single one on there, if I drag more than one, what it's actually doing now is loading those inside of there. So I have the metal runner section, the metal runner side, the metal stud section, and space, etc. So I don't know, I'm going to start off with a metal runner section, and again, you can do whatever you wanted to do. We'll start off with a 6-inch, and I'll just come in here and place this metal runner 6-inch. Now, this is going to be a detail component that's just a single detail component. It is not line-based, which is what you're going to see with a lot of the out-of-the-box detail components. But if I wanted to come in here now and grab a metal stud face so I can actually see what's going on, this is going to be a line-based component. So what this one's going to allow me to do is pick a start point and then start going up and modeling this C-track. If the families are set up, and the majority of them are this way, spacebar will allow me to flip from one side to the other. So if I'm dealing with a line-based component, I can use the spacebar to flip it and get it to the other side. If you forgot the spacebar, depending on who did this, they might have given you flip controls. So if you forgot to flip it over, I've got a flip control where I can go through and do that. Now what you'll start to notice as you're dealing with a lot of these detail components and bringing these in and dealing with the layering on it, that they come in and display in the order they were placed. So since I had placed the runner channel first, then the stud side, it's going to cover up the runner channel, because these aren't just a series of lines. For me, these are actually a series of masking regions. So that way, if I am doing a hybrid detail, I'll cover up what's happening in the model to understand exactly what I'm dealing with just as my detail components. But as you select these objects individually, you're going to notice that you've got a bring to front, send to back type scenario. So I can take that metal stud, send it to the back, and you'll be able to see what's going on inside of there. Hey, I've got this nice little track, and I've got my metal stud running up.
Is there any point where I want to be cognizant of the layers that the way I'm putting in the details?
You can pay attention to keep yourself from going move to front, move to back, send forward, send backwards, but it really doesn't matter. You always have to send to front, move to back. It just becomes at some point in time a crazy game of, am I moving this one forward or this one backward, or what's going on here? So one of the other types of components that you'll have, and they actually have this one out of the box, oops, didn't mean to do that, are gypsum wallboard components. So I'm going to go back to my detail components, and you'll see that I do have this very similar to the Autodesk folder structure for this one. Although in this case, I went through and named all the values in front of them. So I'm going to come down here and grab my gypboard section. I'm going to go ahead and drop this in here. And again, since I dropped a single object, Revit's ready to go for me to start placing this. But I can see inside the type selector, what am I looking for? Was I truly looking for the shaft liner, or am I just looking for gypsum wallboard? Well, in this case, maybe I just wanted to show some gypsum wallboard coming in here. Again, if it's on the wrong side, spacebar will flip it. And then possibly I wanted to come over here to this side and draw some more gypsum wallboard on this side. Now, That's pretty much what the out-of-the-box family would look like. Again, most of the ones I'm grabbing are custom ones that I've created. What's nice about a lot of the stuff that I've selected and that I've created is the fact that I know that most of my architects like to have a fat line on the outside. So I've allowed myself to embed an additional visibility parameter for that line. So if I wanted to have a fat line around the perimeter, I can do it. But maybe in a situation for like this wall type, I might have 2 pieces of gypsum wallboard there. So I can copy it, I can do a create similar, however you wanted to do that. But I didn't really want the fat line between the two. I only wanted it on the one side. So I give myself the capability to turn that on and off as I'm going through. Again, all built into the custom components, and we'll cover that in probably part 2 or 3. So as you're going through, you can start to understand and see really what's happening inside of here, how easy this is to detail. Another thing that I've always liked to add inside of here is the fact that all of my detail components, because maybe we wanted to show this is, I just made up my mind what I'm detailing. This is going to be an inside corner detail or something like that. So I've got this inside corner here. So I give myself the capability to allow any of these to have like an angle on them. So I can come over here to the inside and say, hey, give me a 45. If it goes the wrong direction, give myself a negative value inside of there. So it allows me to come through here and really start getting into creating what I needed to do. Since I decided we're doing an inside corner, of course now I did a hat channel, whatever, we'll start going through and doing some more detail components. So as we go through, do these detail components, it's a whole lot of grabbing this component, grabbing that component, doing it again. Maybe I wanted to come in here and throw a C-stud on the side. So same type scenario, we'll grab a stud section. I'll grab a 6-inch section stud. I don't know if a lot of people know this tip as well, that the space bar will actually rotate before you place at 90-degree increments. Depending on the family, a lot of times if you grab the space bar after the fact, it doesn't rotate. If you have flip controls, it'll only do the flip controls. So depending on how that family was set up. The other thing that I like to point out is as you're placing a family, if you get on an intersection of something and spacebar, it will spacebar at 45-degree increments. So it's a nice little feature. If you wanted to have something coming off a wall at a 45 or something, you don't have to place the component and come back and hit rotate. You just have to get to an intersection where you can then hit the spacebar and go at 45 increments.
Now, what if I'm dealing with something that isn't at 45 or 90 degrees?
Then you've got to use the rotate command.
Yeah.
So unless that's also the fact that if I come over here and let me change something here real quick to answer that question. If I went ahead and made this at a negative 60-degree angle for whatever reason, and now I needed to bring a stud off of that, as you're bringing in the next component, if you hover on that object, it will associate it perpendicular to that object. So if you have something that's at a different angle already in the file and you spacebar, then it'll allow you to stay perpendicular to that object. Once I get to an intersection, it'll be 45 perpendicular to that object, which gives you some really crazy angles.
We have a question from David here. You are host?
It's not a question, it's a comment.
Go to the okay. We'll continue on.
So I'll go back and make this to negative 45-degree angle again. So again, same scenario. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to do a create similar. I'm going to pick on this. I'm going to bring this apart. Now you'll notice that when I do this create similar here, since I did create similar, it didn't give me the 45 on the beginning. It gave me the 45 on the end. So depending on what you're doing, create similar may not work for you. But now we can start coming in here and getting this detail to truly look what we wanted it to look like. We'll grab that 6-inch metal stud. We're kind of changing what I was doing here. We'll place the 6-inch metal stud here. I don't know, maybe I'll space bar it around a couple times, and we'll put a metal stud here. Oops, I thought I'd put a metal stud in there. Try that one more time. And sometimes when I'm doing this is what I love about Revit. Even though my insertion point is up here at the top left, I can come down here and then still align things even though the insertion point isn't there. Love that about Revit. Unlike other detailing programs, AutoCAD Architecture, we can actually snap those things like that. So as I'm going through setting this up, again, you can change the components, you can do what you're doing. But one of the things that if I am truly doing standard details, that you saw when I did my door head, when I came up here and changed this from a 6-inch metal runner to a 4-inch metal runner, everything moved with it. If I go back to the view I'm in, if I were to do the same thing here, not all of that information is going to change. It's only going to update it as it sees fit. So how I accomplished all of that was I came through and used my align command and locked it. I am not a big fan of the align command with modeled components or even detail components to modeled components on a hybrid detail. But I am completely okay with aligning and locking things inside of a detail itself. So if I wanted to make this a standard detail and make things update easily as people came through and started adjusting things, I would go back and grab the align command and start saying, hey, I'm going to start and use this stud as my base. I might need to use my tab key to get to this. Actually, in this case, it's the metal runner. But I'm going to use my tab key to get to this metal runner down here, and I'm going to select that metal runner. Then I'm going to select the gypsum board and padlock it. I'll go back down here and grab my metal runner again, and maybe I'll grab this metal stud up here and padlock that one. So as I'm going through and adjusting it, now if I take this stud and this and say, oh, this wanted to be a 6-inch metal stud because I have it as a runner, try that again.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Oh, I do this all the time, and every time I do this, I'm sitting there, I am doing the face. So I'm trying to change it from a component to a line-based component. You have to choose the right one. So I needed the section, not the stud. Sorry, I do that every time. I sit there dumbfounding myself. Why isn't this working? But then the beauty of this is if I take this and start saying, oh, I lied, it's not 6 inches, it's 4 inches, as this one adjusts, you'll notice it brings the drywall with it. It brings all of that information with it. So obviously, I need to go back and do some more constraining. So if I knew this was always going to have 2 layers of gypsum boarding, I now align it and grab this piece of gypsum board to this piece of gypsum board and lock it. So again, if this then goes and changes, and this time I'll do them both at the same time to be smart, and change these to be 4-inch metal studs, it's bringing that drywall in with it. With the same thing inside of there, if that's what I'm doing, and then this piece of drywall needs to move, I can just start tracking this down, that I want this to be constrained to there, and I can lock it. So again, if I go back now and change this from 4 inches to 6 inches, we can really start getting these locked down, and you'll see things are flexing, moving, stretching, similar to creating a Revit family. So getting a lot of these constraints set up, doing what you needed to do so this information can start coming inside of there. So as I'm creating this stuff, as I'm getting into here, maybe I wanted to show, I was originally doing this as a hat channel, but this detail is not going to make a whole lot of sense when I'm done. So I wanted I wanted to come inside of here and maybe show that this was going to be on a concrete footing was my original thought. So I've got a detail component that's for concrete as well. And you're going to see that a lot of my detail components are actually pretty generic. I've got this one, and I'm using the CSI keynoting, and I just call this 030. I didn't get specific into it. And the reason I didn't get that specific into it is because this is just concrete. It's going to allow me to do whatever I wanted to do with that concrete. So when I come in here and say, oh, I want to come, and this isn't going to be a 6-inch slab, this is going to be a 10-inch foundation wall. Now I can pick on here, and again, guess what? This is just a line-based component like you saw with the drywall, like you saw with the side of the metal stud. There's my line-based component going through and doing what I wanted. Looks like I might have missed that. I did, so we'll just align it to the stud, and what the heck, we can even lock it there. So completely able to come through here, grab this object, and just draw it, and it looks like a piece of wall foundation. Again, just like the rest of them, I have this little nice inline checked on here, so now I'm just seeing the inline. And maybe it was supposed to be centered, so you'll also see that all the components I create, even though I don't really need a center point of this metal stud, I put it in there as I go through these, because that way I can now align and get these things centered on the as-needed basis as I go through and set this up. So for me, all the components I'm creating always have a center reference to them, for reasons of aligning, locking, constraining, and doing things like that as we go through and set this up.
A question here from David. He's asking, it's a real question, by the way. He wants to point that out. Thanks for pointing that out. Can you lock a detail component to a wall so that it changes if someone changes the wall the detail was to correspond to? So what I'm interpreting this is an actual wall in Revit in the floor plans, and I think we kind of answered that earlier.
Yes, you can. I don't recommend it. I was with a client, and they had spent like 4 hours trying to figure out whenever they moved a wall, they had all these different walls they tried to move, they'd get like 50 error messages saying, constraints not satisfied. And be like, what do you want to do? And be like, delete 50 constraints. And they were freaking out, and we came to find out that what was actually happening is there was a whole lot of detail components aligned and locked to this. So as people started going through and moving a wall, it was trying to move the detail components, but that was also aligned to maybe a door in the project or something weird, and all of this craziness was happening. You absolutely can do that. I highly recommend against doing it. If you've got a hybrid detail where you've got components over it, go to the detail, you'll see the model behind it, you'll see it updated. I don't think it's that big of a deal to go through and adjust it.
Yeah.
Plus, the problem that I always have is somebody's going to align and lock 10 of the objects but forget 2. So then you're going to think, oh, everything moved and it's all great, and you don't realize that 2 of the objects didn't move because they might even be behind it. You know, if this object, let's see which one's great. If this object moves over, well, now I've got everything aligned and locked.
Not the left side.
But there you go. If this object moved over an 1/8 of an inch, I've now covered my stud. So for me, it's one of those things where I don't align and lock a whole lot of things because inevitably somebody's going to forget 1 or 2 objects, and then you're going to have an issue on your hands. So
and of course they're going to do that, you know, the day you're trying to print because they wanted to change one thing. So we get into that scenario.
So you have that capability if you want to get set up. So as I'm going through and doing this, and let's actually, I don't want to align this to the center. Let's go align this. We're going to call this outside sheathing. Oh, by the way, another really weird glitch about detail components, that if I'm using the align command, and obviously you can see it's highlighting that gypsum board, a lot of times it won't highlight the other detail component. So you're like, well, is it going to align? And you're hitting the tab key 100 times and nothing shows up. I don't know if this is just me and a graphics card issue on my last 3 laptops, but you'll notice that when I do this, it doesn't actually show the wall, but it still does it. So you just understand that that's a nice little glitch. Maybe it's a my laptop glitch or my last 3 laptop glitches, not sure. But you'll just notice that it still does go through and set those things up.
Well, and can't we still look at the command prompt down on the left? Or?
And you still can look at the status bar.
Status
command
bar.
prompt.
Sorry.
AutoCAD terminology.
The status bar on the lower left to see what you're snapping to.
So the other thing as I get into this, we always usually come in and show different types of waterproofing or whatever we're talking about on there. And again, another detail component. And I guarantee you're not going to find a detail component like this out of the Autodesk stuff, but this will be, when we get into it in detailing part 2, the easiest family there is to create. But one of the things I have inside of here is I have, in this case, it's 070. I have this family called 070 membranes. And what this family is it's still a line-based family. And when I go into my type selector to start looking at this, you can see I've got all of these different things inside of here. I got fluid applied, building wrap, grade D paper, whatever I'm looking for here. But basically what I can start doing inside of here, we'll go fluid applied, I can start drawing this line. And another little known tip that a lot of people don't know about is this offset option. Hey, as I draw these lines, I like them to be 3/32 of an inch away. So now I can just come down here, start grabbing this, and you'll notice that even though I'm right on the face of the wall, it's going through and drawing that line 3/32 of an inch away. A little bit bold and fat there, so in this case I should probably go turn the exterior face line off on that gypsum board, and I should probably go make it glass mat sheathing. You know, I'm going to leave a gypsum board for now. We'll come back later. And I actually have a weird glitch here that I forgot to fix. In my object styles, I like that as a dashed line, and one of my families does not have the correct line type for this line. So all of my lines in one of my families is straight, so I'm going to go fix these real quick and make them hidden lines as opposed to solid lines. That looks a little bit more industry standard. So you'll see that I created that. It looks just like a line, but it's not. It's still a detail component. I'm going to show you why I do that a little bit later as we start going through and really getting into this information. I'll have a solid line for like flashing. I have a dashed line for like building wrap. And this dashed line can really pretty much be anything. If you wanted to show, just call it, you know, lines of something above, odds are you're probably going to want a thinner line weight. So you can have just different line-based detail components, a fat dashed line, a thin dashed line, a fat solid line, a thin solid line. Because if I wanted to call this as something else, the beauty of this is all I have to do is say edit type and duplicate this, and this is going to be that super cool new technology membrane. Because that's what we're going to have this set up as. So now I've got this new thing, and all I basically have to do is change the text, and that's what I'll be tagging later. Super cool new stuff. New stuff. New stuff. So that's what I love about it, is if you're in a project and you start realizing, oh man, I don't need the fluid applied, or I've got something new inside of here, let me go through and start setting this all up. it'll give that to you and allow you to start just duplicating that family and get what you needed it to do. So pretty much I think makes sense. Everybody's understanding it's all about the detail components. Now I'm going to go throw some stuff in here because I know we have a few structural engineers on hand. So one of the things that I'm going to get into is I really wanted to go do some rebar. I think that's already loaded inside of here. And this is my old file that I have not updated to the CSI. But so I've got these different rebars. So I've got like structural rebar spaced in a section. I've got structural rebar spaced on a side. So I'm going to come in here and say, hey, I wanted some number 4 rebars. And what's great, or what I think is great about this is in my rebar here, normally what I'm going to do is come in and start using the offset. Hey, I know I want 1.5 inches clear of what we're doing here. So I'm going to have 1.5 inches of cover distance. And I'm going to do the same offset I did before. And then I'm just going to pick up here and come down here. And notice how it's drawing it on the wrong side. So again, space bar flips it to the correct side. And I'll put that in there. And there is my nice rebar components inside of there. If this had been an entire length of a wall, I know I'm outside of my detail box now, but cancel. I know I'm outside of my detail box now, but this is just a demo. It's okay. So what I can do is just take this little grit, pull it down to where it needs to go, and there's all my rebar. What I build into this is I haven't built a cover distance on the face, but I actually do have cover distances on the end. So if I'm like, oh, that shouldn't have been 2 inches, that only should have been 3/4 of an inch, I can change the cover distance. So I'm still snapping at the face of the wall or the end of the wall and the base of the wall, and I can go through and start changing that cover distance to get it right where I want it to be. I can change the spacing on this. Maybe you want an 8-inch spacing on this, whatever it may be. Pretty close, but you'll see it's going to start updating that information. Same thing that maybe I want to come through here now and do some rebar spaced on the side, so we'll go with the number 6 bar in this case. I don't need the offset here because what I'm going to do is just simply find the back side of that rebar. Probably need the space bar to get to the other side and come down here to the end. I lied. I didn't need the space bar it. See, that's what I get for guessing. And then same scenario, start changing the values of my cover distance of what I wanted this to be. So it really allows you to start coming through here and setting this up. Now, the other thing that we can start doing, so I showed you how, like in a scenario up here, I was aligning and locking a jip board to the stud. But in this detail, I know I'm going to want to come in here and call out my cover distance. So I've got 1-inch cover distance. Oops, that's not what I actually wanted. I wanted 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab these 2 objects. I'm going to activate the dimensions. I don't know if everybody knows you can do this. If I grab one object, I can click on the temporary dimension and say it should be 1.5 inches and move it over. But when I grab more than one object, it doesn't allow me to click on the temporary or the dimension that becomes temporary. But you can also hit activate dimension up here, and when you hit the activate dimension, now that temporary dimension becomes active if you click on it and not off to the side. So I can say I should have been 1.5 inches, and it will move all of the objects that were selected. So now that I've got that 1.5 inches there, I'm probably going to want to come in my detail, and I'm going to want to change the text here. I'm going to put text below and just put it needs to be clear. So I've got my 1.5 inches clear. What's great about that, I'm going to padlock that value. So now if the size of this footing changes, or foundation wall, whatever it is I've decided to draw, if the size of this changes, then that's going to stay 1.5 inches. But if that moves, I want this one to move with it. So again, it's coming back to the align command, grabbing the back side of the one, grabbing the front side of the other, and constraining it. So if all of a sudden I come back and decide that this should have been an 8-inch foundation wall, not 10-inch, and boom, that's going to move right along for the ride. So either padlocking and constraining or possibly using the dimensions with padlocks work really well when you're starting to get into standard details when we get into this and start designing these and going into it. So I got about 20 minutes. So that's great. I've showed you how to use lines, but really, why am I using these intelligent detail components? Besides the fact they just rock, well, why am I starting to use these intelligent detail components?
Yeah, why? Tell us.
So what's nice about this is now what I'm going to do is go back to my Annotate tab, and I'm simply going to go do a tag by category.
That's tag all.
Did I do tag all?
Yeah.
I didn't.
No, okay.
So I'm going to go do tag by category. I'm going to grab my freehand, and you're going to see that as I just hover over this information, it's understanding what that object is. However you set your tags up to be, it's going to go through and get these displayed for you. So the reason I have this nice little guide grid here is I can get the elbows always the same length. So there's my elbow there. You know, I'm going to come down here and set this up like this and have my 6-inch cold form metal stud. And then maybe I wanted to call out my gypsum board sheathing, which I usually do these in order, but that's okay. And then here's the reason why I don't draw the lines. Now I can come down here and get my super cool new stuff. If that had been a line, I would not be able to tag that. I would have to go back and grab it and add text to it or anything like that. You'll also see that in certain scenarios like this one with my rebar, it's just coming out and saying number 4 bar. So how do I go through and set this up and get this working? Well, in this case, I do have different tags created. So I've got a rebar tag, so I can come in here, and this is going to be looking at different, should go to the left justified. Yeah. This is going to be looking at different object properties. So this tag is looking at possibly comments and type comments, but this tag over here is going to be looking at custom rebar components. And I lost my arrowhead, so I'll fix that in a minute. So what I can start doing now is when I go to do a tag by category, I can change the tag, the default tag if I want to, instead of my, I did all this right justified, oh well. I grab my rebar left justified, so now if I'm going to go tag a whole series of rebar, then I can come through here and tag the rebar. If I'm going to go back and just have detail components, then I can switch it back to be, you know, my left justified regular component here as well. Okay, and I think I've already tagged everything, but you guys are getting the point of this. Okay, so now we've got all this stuff in here and saying, okay, we've got these tags created and set up. What I like to do is I've got a tag in here that's right justified. And you're going to see that this tag, again, custom tag, we'll learn about this next time, how to create these. But my custom tag says TC&C. And for me, I always put the values of what I'm tagging in there. That says type comments and comments. So this tag is looking to the objects, type comments. So it's coming down here and it's going to grab the 5/8 gypsum board type comment. But it also is looking to comments. And in this case, this piece of gypsum board doesn't have comments. And the reason I really like to tag with comments and type comments is I really didn't want to tag 5/8 gypsum board, 5/8 gypsum board. What I wanted to say is in parentheses, 2 layers. So I'm going to come back here and grab, I made all these right justified as opposed to left justified. Should have paid attention to that, so we'll make them all left justified, which are all probably going to move. Had I been intelligent and paying attention, that's user error there. Or as we tech people like to call it, PEBCAC, problem exists between keyboard and chair.
Yep.
So now what you can see is I tagged this one piece of gypsum board, and it's saying gypsum board 2 layers. That didn't update all gypsum board. It's not a piece of text. I have going through here and setting this up, so if I go tag any one of these other detail components, it's not going to come in here and give me 5/8 gypsum board each side. It's just going to come in here and say it's 5/8 gypsum board. So the 2 layers is simply a comment that I can start adding in addition to this. Now, I'm not saying I never use text inside of here. If I've got to put a whole assembly description or an installation description or some sort of thing like that, absolutely I'm going to get into it. I know a lot of structural engineers don't just say number 4, 6 inches on center. They come through here and add an entire novel after that. Well, if that's the case, you can still do that. I can come down here and add an entire novel after this, and it'll still display what's going on inside of there. So yeah, it gets a little bit hard to edit because if this truly is an entire novel that has 100,000 words in it, you're trying to figure out what's going on in here, and it's just this one long line of text that's really, really slow. One solution to that is select it all, copy it to the clipboard, go to like Notepad, edit it in Notepad, and paste it back in. It's one way to do it and go through and set it up. Most of what I do, I'm pretty basic and generic about how I'm calling it all out and how I'm dealing with it. So that's what I love about this. And the other thing that's nice about this is if I come back and I'm like, holy crap, I'm an idiot, that shouldn't be gypsum board, I don't change the text because it's not, it's a tag. What I'm going to do is come in here and grab that component, change the component to be my matte sheathing, and my text updates, or excuse me, my tag updates it. So that's really what I like to do as we start going through and getting set up inside of this, is creating intelligent detail components and adding that values to them. With that said, out of the box, Revit has over 600 detail components for you. You can go through and look at the detail components. I started most of my original details. Everything was pre-set up, the detail components out of the box, until I started realizing, man, there's situations where I want to show the gypsum board mitered in this case. You know, I want to be able to turn that line off, so I can come through here and start turning these lines off. I think I got them right. Yes. And get rid of the mitered line. I can go through and start saying, man, I don't need the one over here. I wanted the fat line rate. So for me, what started as out-of-the-box components, I started adapting and taking in further. The other issue I had is, as I worked maybe possibly to swap this from a metal stud to a wood stud, they were all rotated different out of the box. So if I changed this to be a wood stud, it would be flipped upward. And it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Tell me breaking constraints. So I started going through and making sure that my detail components had the same is reference on the reference planes. We're all facing the same direction, et cetera, et cetera. So a question did come up. I'm sorry, were you?
Yeah, no, I was going to.
Go ahead,
yeah.
Brian.
The question did come up. Can you check the spelling in tags?
No. So, but here's the nice part of that. So to follow up with that question, spell check in Revit only works on text. It does not work on like title block information. It doesn't work on properties. Basically, it only works on text. So kind of a downside. But what is nice about this, let's say you realize that you misspelled something, and I'm sure I probably spelled something weird.
Or maybe you want to do
maybe I want to
chipboard.
change it, because we're calling it glass mat gyp sheathing as opposed to gypsum board. Maybe we want to gypsum, or maybe we want the gypsum board to say gypsum. If I grab any one of the pieces of gypsum board and edit the type, I can come in here and say, holy cow, we just wanted to say gyp board. I changed the one, all of them updated. So yes, it does suck you don't have spell check, and especially on the comment side of things. But if you're talking you want to change something on that, I just changed the component, and all 5,000 tags to that component has updated. I don't know how terrible it was when I was actually working right before my last job in industry. We had, you know, used this new super cool stuff, and then the contractor told us it was too expensive, and we were going to go back to like 30-pound felt. I had to go find the pieces of text in AutoCAD that said super cool new stuff. Yes, we have find in AutoCAD. But it was in 500 different DWG drawings. So I was opening up all these different DWGs. I literally spent a week and a half of time changing super cool new stuff to say 20-pound building paper or something.
Yeah.
Well, what's nice here is I could grab this super cool new technology membrane, select all instances in the entire project, that could be 5,000 of them in Revit, and say, oh, we actually want a grade D building paper. Done. I just updated every single detail in the entire project. And that's really the advantage of going through and trying to come through and set this up. Yes, there are downsides. There isn't a spell check. There are downsides that if these objects start to move, the tags move with them. In my opinion, this is not a liability issue. The fact that I called it out wrong is. It's not clean having the text not move, but it's not a liability issue.
Yeah,
so for me, that's the lesser of the two evils.
Exactly.
Getting sued versus just not looking pretty. I think not looking pretty, in my opinion, is the lesser of the two evils.
Well, some architects would disagree. I mean, but
and I completely understand it's different for each firm. But as you start going through and getting that set up, you know, nothing's going to be perfect. So you're just going to have to choose for you what's okay to deal with in your situation.
Yeah, David had another question. Does the comment stay if you change your components? So does the
So if I take this gyp board and change it to matte sheathing, yeah, the comments do stay. I know with some model components that is not always the case, that the instance properties can possibly go away. But you'll notice that I took it from glass, from gypsum board to glass mat. My two layers still resides there. So as you go through and change that out, it's going to remember the comments inside of it. So the other thing on detailing is, yes, even though I've done all this, as you saw before, we can still dimension. So as long as your detail components are built in to be able to come through and have a value in there, so I should be able to tab to get to this and then tab to get to that. I can still place my dimensions. You know, that's a 6-inch max. So I'd probably want to go grab this and overwrite my text and say 6-inch max. Also, I don't know if anybody noticed, when I was trying to click the text, I accidentally moved that. Does anybody know that they added this in 2012, that if you grab a dimension string, you can tell the reset text dimension to go back home. So if you're trying to click on the text and you did a very small move, you don't have to sit there and like the old version find it to snap it in. You can just right-click and say, oops, not right-click on the grip, right-click and say reset dimension text position. So, sorry, another little tip I'm throwing out there that I found when 2013 came out. I thought it was a new 2013 feature, and it actually happened to be a 2012 feature I used the entire year and didn't know.
Wow.
So, again, I just had a thought in my brain, and the last thing I wanted to cover in the 10 minutes we had.
You were talking about dimensioning, we were talking about tags, so we were
Yeah,
going on
I
with...
just totally brain fried on what I was going to show that I had set up in there. So you'll start to see me do a little bit more of this in detailing part 2, but when you get into this, even things like I need to show the earth, and this is going down below grade or whatever, I even happen to have a thing for that as well. It's earth. So I can just go grab earth. And again, this is a line-based component, so if I really wanted to, I can start to show, hey, it's going to be sloped. I guess I should have flipped it. And what's really great about this is now I could just continue from there because I wanted to show the slope.
Flip it.
Let's try doing that straight. So I'm going to undo that and do it straight and flip it first. So what's great about that, again, your levels of detail, you can move these things to the back. And here's what I hate. You can't move them to the back if you select more than one. So you can only grab objects one at a time and send it to the back. Grab an object one at a time and send it to the back and get that stuff on top of it. Obviously, I need some more details. But that's kind of some of those things that I really like to do is, it's a line-based detail component of earth. I can, use it over and over and over. And depending on the display order I have going on inside of there, I should be able to get it represented exactly the way I wanted it to be represented. I think this is an old version because I didn't have to flip it. Yeah, I have a newer version which also allows me to turn the fat line on at the grade as well. So just different components, and they've developed over the years that I've used them. So I think that's pretty much what we've got going on. We do have 8 minutes left, so I just wanted to make sure if there's any follow-up questions anybody have. I know some questions were coming through as we were working. Hopefully everybody found this beneficial, and you're going to be like, holy cow, we really want to start doing this and using this into our projects.
Yeah, and this is definitely one of those things where I know Brian's teaching, and we're teaching here at CAD-1 that you no longer are doing the old system of just drawing lines and putting some detail components in. This is really where a lot of this stuff is going, and we see it moving into the future as far as the detail components, having all tag, having very smart, intelligent models out there. So yeah, if you guys, again, if you have any other comments out there. And as David said, yes, so much better than AutoCAD way, especially going out there and, bringing it in, exploding. We never want to hear anybody on this program coming in and saying, well, I've got this issue where I keep exploding my details. Let's see, Ann says she's definitely interested in the guide grid. I used to use all those the time in CAD. Would love to know how to make it in Revit. It's actually going to be similar to what you did in AutoCAD as far as putting that line work together and kind of spelling it out and making the different line types. Unless you had more to add on that, it's a family-based component.
It's a family component. I can cover it in detailing part 2. It's very parameterized because I have a tendency to over-parameterize, and I don't know if that's a word, but I use it. Parameterize everything simply because I get this detail component, this guide grid, and the size of title block it goes on is going to vary. The title block, especially for structural engineers, an architect might have a 1-inch border, might have a 3-inch border. What's going on with that? So this title block is fully parameterized, so I can change it from the sheet. Maybe you're not using, a 30 by 42. Maybe you're using a 24 by 36. So as I change that, it's actually going to just simply update this. So I can say the size of the title block, the borders that, in this case, this was created for structural engineer originally, then adapted for a few architects. But I can come through here and start setting this all up, and as I change that size, you can see, ooh, that's really the value in the area I had to work in if we're doing 4 columns by 4 columns. So yeah, we'll maybe cover that in detailing part 2 or possibly part 3 if we have time. I will try to get it posted up to my website so it'll be available for download.
I had another question from Nick here. Do you ever have problems copying standard details into models with duplicate families?
Yes. I think I've blogged about that. I might not have, and if I haven't, I will.
Well, there you go. Now you can get one in front of Desi unless she's doing it right now already.
Desi's doing all of them. So what actually happens is if somebody came into here, and you guys saw me do it, I grabbed this family, I hit edit type, I hit save. Internally, or I didn't hit save, I hit edit type, I loaded it back into the project. As you start manipulating things around, those objects then have a new save to them, or they understand that they've been changed, and we'll call it a save date built into the family. So when they then go and copy another detail that had that in there, they're different. So Revit creates a new version of that. One workaround to it is if you haven't just hit edit, type, and duplicate in your project, what you can actually do is reload all the families. So if I come down here, I think I can do more than I have to do one at a time. If I came down here and grabbed one of these components and you hit reload, and you reload this family into your project, and then you reload it into the file you're copying the standard details from, then when you copy and paste that detail, they're going to both have what we're calling the same save date, and then you won't get the detail component 1, detail component 2, detail component 3 that Revit keeps duplicating them on. So it's because Revit sees a different save date built into those. So a lot of times for me, if I've got like a container file that has all these standard details inside of it, and I have some of the detail components in my project, I will reload all the detail components into my project. I will reload all the detail components into my container file, and then I'll copy and paste those across. Sounds like it's kind of tedious, but again, you remember if I really wanted to reload a whole bunch of those, using Windows Explorer, I could just, grab this and load 10 of them in at once, and I would get the override existing if something had changed on that. So you will get that option as you're going through to do that. Drag them in, reload them in, go to the reload button. Yeah, it's a little bit tedious, but it's less tedious than having detail component 1, detail component 925, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Another question John has is text size. Also, text wrap centered both lines on the leader line. Did not stay on the top line. And I think he's asking.
Detail components, you are correct. Inside of detail components, you are going to always be at the center of the detail component. So of the tag. Let me rephrase that. Tags, the leader will always come off of the center. So if you have 2 lines, you're going to see it centered. This one looks like it's off the top line. It's technically not. It's just centered on the entire tag. There are workarounds to that. If you take the tag and build a very long line in there, so no matter if there was 1 line of text or 3 lines of text, it was always going to the same location. That does work. The problem is then when you hover your mouse up here, you're grabbing that tag, which is way the heck down there.
Yeah.
So there are workarounds to it. I just kind of again, I know that's a graphics issue, but this is not a liability issue. And I personally don't think it's worth the frustration and time to change it. If we ever get the option to have top, left, right, bottom, whatever from Autodesk, great. But until then, I really don't stress about it. And I know I come from the construction background more than the architectural. To me, it can be built. The information's there. I'm not liable. Therefore, I'm not that concerned about it. But you are correct. It is one of those things that, hey, it's not what we're used to as a standard.
It's not pretty. All right. Well, we don't seem to have no other questions coming in. I don't know if you have any parting thoughts to leave us, Brian?
The only other one I had, and my poll question is not working, but if you guys would like to, go ahead and just give us a question or in the question line. Go ahead and, no, I'm not actually doing anything. Your screen's not frozen. I haven't, or actually maybe your screen is frozen. Oh, somehow I paused it. I hate it when I accidentally do that. Somehow I paused it. So yes, your screen was frozen, so sorry about that. I must have accidentally bumped the pause one. So one thing I was going to say, and does not look like it's coming up, but I was going to have a poll. So if you guys want to get more information offered from either CAD-1 or BD Mackey Consulting, CAD-1 does, I believe, still offer.
We still do, and we've changed it. I've upgraded all this stuff, content in there. We basically throw out some of the old ways of doing it.
So there is a detailing class offered at CAD-1, and what I'm recently starting to offer at BD Mackey is convert your details. So we can sit down and have a conversation. If you guys have 500 AutoCAD details and you want those all converted to intelligent Revit details, not like some firms, I know there's other people out there who do it, and they basically just bring the CAD file in, explode it, and change it to Revit line work. It'll be intelligent details. It is a service that BD Mackey Consulting is starting to look into. I don't have it on my services page, but if you guys are anybody's interested in any of that, just type in a question, detailing class CAD-1 or convert your details BD Mackey or BDM, so that way we'll understand to get back in contact with you when we're done.
We'll definitely be able to help you with any of that.
Or go to the CAD-1 website or go through the BD Mackey website and contact us through the emails there. So with that said, it looks like there aren't any more questions. Oh wait, no, one question did come up.
Final detail size adjusted for fitting on sheet template.
Well, that was the whole point of this. So yes, obviously my detail is too large, but if I go change the scale down to 1.5 inches, you'll see everything updated. I should probably grab all of this stuff and now move it into my detail. but you'll see, okay, there you go. I'm not going to be that accurate, but just making it all fit inside of there. I might need to put a masking region inside of there, or I should probably, shorten this up, but I was trying to just leave it what was going on just to show you guys and display it. Normally I'm a little bit more OCD about this stuff. Then last question, when is part 2? It is next month. You can either go to the BD Mackey website. Actually, I did not find it on the CAD-1 website, so I'm going to have to point you to the BD Mackey website. And if you go to the events calendar, and hopefully I'm not paused anymore.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
You'll see that I do have detailing part 2, along with Revit Radio. So I have a lot of new faces here that don't know about Revit Radio. Revit Radio is where you can ask any tech support question, and usually myself and Stan and Brian a lot of times is in there. We answer your tech support questions live on the webcast. So just go to the BD Mackey Consulting events calendar, and you will definitely see part 2.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for joining us, and we'll see you all again next week. And yes, these are being recorded, so if you need to...
hopefully we don't have technical difficulties. We did these last year, recorded them all, and not a single one recorded, so we've been having more success, but we're hoping we'll have success.
Yeah, so we definitely hit the record button. You'll have to find out later if it actually worked.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Bye.